What's up, everyone? My name is Mistic. Welcome back to Mistic Rex. We have a video by Tierzoo, the reptile tier list. Ooh. I have encountered some reptiles in the past. Even though I am not personally a reptile, I am a bat. Hopefully you know what a bat is. Hopefully. I have encountered reptiles in the past, like turtles and snakes and lizards and whatever else is a reptile. Let's see where they rank on this list. And this is a pretty long video by Tierzoo. I don't think I've seen one this long by him. Let's get into it.
Reptiles are one of the largest, most successful factions in the entire game. The massive variety of reptilian builds encompasses every strategy from defensive tank builds to rush-down combo builds, other grappler builds to status effect control builds, and many more. Reptiles may not be the dominant faction anymore, but they still have tons of powerful high-tier builds that can hold their ground against the best of the best. But which of these strategies are the most viable in the current meta, and which are struggling to keep up? Find out in the ultimate reptile tier list. But before we get into this massive tier list, what exactly is a reptile? There are many notable perks, but the three most important ones for a reptile main to learn and master are scale armor, cold-bloodedness, and eggshells. Scale armor provides excellent defense without significantly restricting the user's mobility. Scales are best at deflecting slashing type damage, perfect for allowing the reptile player to handle scrappy duels with other reptiles or mammals, where claws are their primary weapon to worry
about. I love a good fight.
However, scales often struggle against piercing damage, so builds with sharp beaks, fangs, or stingers can be tough matchups for reptiles. The Cold-Blooded perk is a core part of the reptile build, and has a wide variety of implications. It's a trade-off. Cold-Blooded builds have slower stamina regeneration and lower maximum stamina than Warm-Blooded builds, but also require less food to survive and age more slowly. This means
they
reptile
live like
players can be a bit
hundreds
more
of
selective
years,
in picking their battles, and don't need to take every fight they encounter head-on, and also means they can survive temporary famines and droughts better than Warm-Blooded builds. Reptiles also get bonus energy in sunlight, which can be super helpful in a pinch. Eggshells might seem like a minor ability, but it was a massive upgrade over the amphibians' unshelled jelly eggs, as it means reptile players can move their respawn points essentially anywhere, as opposed to being hard locked to aquatic biomes. This is huge for avoiding spawn campers and setting future playthroughs up for success. During the Mesozoic expansion, reptiles were far and away the most dominant faction in the game.
Spawn campers like turtles, sea turtles. They get spawn camped a lot in the when they go from the beach to the ocean. They get spawn camped hard, so it doesn't really stop spawn campers too much. If they know where your spawn is, they can get you pretty easily. Or the ones who steal eggs, like is it red robins, red birds, blue birds, green birds, green eggs and ham. I know one bird steals eggs, right? They don't even eat them, right? They just kill them.
Being top tier on land, in the sea, and in the sky. But even after the devs dropped the banhammer on the most overpowered reptilian builds, reptiles still maintain a thriving player base and remain a competitive threat.
I wish bats had more
turtles,
player
lizards,
base.
snakes, and crocs, which reptiles rank highest? Let's jump into the tier list.
Snake. Oh.
Starting at the very bottom of this group, we have the garter snake, one of the weakest snake builds in the game.
That's a garden
Data
snake,
miners are actually unsure whether or not this build is venomous, but if it is, it's some of the weakest venom in the game, and with no other offensive.
I really like the snake. Like, my grandmother had a hot tub that a snake would just a gardener snake would just chill in, and she would just use a hot tub, no problem. Gardener snakes, I believe, is it garden snake? I think they're the same thing, right? They're chill. I love them. They're so cool. I've held python snakes, I think, or boa. I don't remember which one.
Abilities, the garter snake essentially only has favorable matchups against things far smaller than it, like frogs and mice. Because they're so vulnerable, garter snake players love to attack aquatic targets like tadpoles and small fish. But they have no actual abilities that synergize with this playstyle, nor is it a particularly good swimmer, and therefore takes on considerable risk when they venture into the water. Garter snakes are also caught in an endless loop of wasting a ton of evolution points, evolving extreme toxin resistance to the poison of a specific newt build. This isn't very efficient, but I guess the garter snake needs to preserve its few favorable matchups.
Right.
Next in F tier, we have the snake-necked turtles. Snake-necked turtles have significantly longer necks than the rest of the turtle faction, and although this does grant them a reach advantage in a few scenarios, allowing it to attack prey behind cover and whatnot, This comes at a huge cost. This build's weak point is effectively triple in size.
My neck
Not
is
only
pretty
does this make it an
exposed.
easier attack target, but it's also too large for
I
the
can
turtle
do
to fully
this.
withdraw its neck back into its shell. Without the ability to properly guard its weak point, snake neck turtles have lost the best perk of playing the turtle class.
Yeah.
Yes, being able to reach further with your bite attack is nice, but skilled players will punish this hard.
Woo.
Next in F tier we have the
Never heard
racer
of that
snake.
one.
This is a snake build that put an above average number of evolution points into mobility,
Does it
making
drive a
it one of the
car?
fastest snake builds in the game.
Oh.
That's not really saying a lot given that snakes tend to have pretty poor movement speed, but credit
Really?
where credit is due, this does give them a much better chance of dashing into cover when under attack. Unfortunately, as with a lot of mobility-centric builds, this alone isn't enough to make them competitively viable. In fact, even with their above-average slithering speed, they're usually still too slow to chase down many of their preferred attack targets. They're also worse climbers than most snakes, making them one of the few snakes that can be countered by simply climbing out of reach.
Why
In
are
almost
they
all
worse?
cases, a snake's worst matchup is against birds, and unfortunately for the racer snake, speed usually isn't much use against a surprise aerial attack. Their lack of practical applications for their signature abilities plants them firmly in F tier for me.
D tier.
In D tier, we have the skink, a smaller lizard build with very little in the way of unique special abilities.
I think I've
Their
encountered
stats are also
one.
quite low, and their game plan generally just consists of chasing down players in the lower weight classes, and struggles pretty hard when forced to defend itself. In particular, this build has a lot of trouble dealing with birds. Despite the fact that it often hunts in grassy fields, it lacks the stealth stats required to avoid detection from above. In fact, many skinks are known for being brightly colored or having one specifically brightly colored body part. Skinks try to avoid being griefed by digging burrows for themselves, and while burrows are a great hiding place, the burrowing playstyle tends to work best when you've got the ability to launch a powerful attack in a single direction, since the bottleneck of a burrow makes it near impossible for a predator to approach without getting hit. Skinks can't really mount any sort of attack, so if their burrow gets discovered, it's most likely game over. The one defensive ability that they do have is one commonly found in the lizard player base, Autotomy. Autotomy allows the user to drop their tail in order to get one free escape from a combo or a grab. Now, to be fair, being able to break out of your opponent's death combos is an extremely useful trait that can save you from certain defeats.
How is it
but with
still
that said,
moving?
Autotomy is extremely costly to use, isn't guaranteed to
move?
work, and leaves you with reduced max HP for the rest of the game, even if your character has some regenerative abilities. For the larger lizard builds, losing your tail also removes one of your best defensive options. But for the skink, this isn't as big a problem. With all that being said, skinks are one of the more lackluster lizard builds, so let's keep going and get to the more interesting ones.
Come back?
Also in D tier, we have the basilisk lizard, which is most notable for its use of the sprint ability.
I've seen those in Florida, I think.
But also to cross bodies of water.
I love how they run.
And it certainly is a flashy move, but upon further examination, I don't think it's really all that useful in the long run.
I don't
Being
care,
on
it looks
the surface
cool.
of the water is quite possibly the most vulnerable position in the game, leaving you open to attacks from above and below. But ultimately, I think it's more important to just point out that the whole reason the Reptile faction split off from the amphibian player base in the first place was to remove their reliance on water. So choosing an ability with a pretty situational use that also requires that the user be on the water's edge to use it is kind of a step backwards in the grand scheme of things.
But it's so cool.
The basilisk
Who
doesn't
cares?
even have bad stats.
It's
it
worth
couldn't
it.
use the water dash move without
It's
above
worth
average
it.
mobility. But still, I think its choice of moveset is pretty self-limiting, and they'd be better off speccing into other signature moves.
Vine snake.
Next on the tier list, we have the Vine Snake. Now, there are
Haven't
many highly
seen a
effective
player
arboreal
for
snake
this.
builds, and all things considered, the Vine Snake isn't terrible. It's got
Really?
great stealth and is an excellent climber. But I mean, just look at this thing. With the lowest HP and defensive stats of any snake, this build folds to absolutely any attack. Vine snakes entrust their survival to their above-average stealth stat, but if that fails and the Vine Snake is discovered, they resort to intimidation. Their intimidation tactic consists of sticking out their brightly colored tongue as a warning. Much like with the blue-tongued skink, I don't consider this to be a particularly effective defensive display, especially when this warning is backed by some of the weakest venom in the snake faction. Definitely not F tier due to its decent camouflage, but with nothing else going for it, it's stuck in D tier.
Tiger.
Next in D tier, we have the Tiger Keelback. This snake build breaks the mold when it comes to toxic strategies in snakes, as rather than dumping all of its evolution points into venom, the Keelback also allocates some of its resources into becoming poisonous, meaning that they can inflict the toxic status effect both when dealing damage and when taking damage. This extra defensive ability definitely raises the Keelback's ranking compared to most colobrid snakes. However, overall, it's still not that great. Both their venom and their poison aren't all that potent, and it's possible that going all in on one of these strategies might have been the better play in the long run. Still, the Keelback strategy does mitigate one of the colobrid faction's main weaknesses though, which is that they have a hard time using their venom defensively. Many colobrids, including the Vine Snake and Keelback, are venomous. This is useful because, I mean, how else would a snake barely thicker than a piece of spaghetti deal any damage, right? The problem is, colobrids lack the efficient venom delivery abilities found in the more dangerous snake builds. Their fangs are located at the back of their mouths, and these fangs don't actually inject venom. The venom is just kind of part of their saliva, so to deal any damage with it,
Like,
they really chew on their target for a good chunk of time. As you might expect, this makes individual strikes from most venomous colobirds quite harmless, as they don't contain much venom per hit, and they also can't really use their fangs unless they get a really solid bite in. So the keelback's poison does sort of cover for this weakness, which is great, and for that it gets to the top of D tier. However, a defensive poison is by no means the only way to mitigate the drawbacks of having rear fangs, as we'll see as we move out of the low tier and into mid tier. Next in D tier, we have the soft shell turtle, an unconventional turtle build which sacrifices a bit of defense for greatly increased agility and stealth in the water. The lack of hardened scutes on their shell gives them a lot more flexibility, so it doesn't limit the turtle's mobility nearly as much as the more heavily armored turtle shells do. Their flat shape allows them to make extra tight turns in the water, allowing them to evade attacks and chase prey more effectively. Their reduced bulk also makes it easier for them to hide under the mud, helping them to both ambush their prey and evade detection by predators. And while they definitely don't have the strongest bite attack on this list, a soft-shell turtle can still deal a solid amount of damage with their bite. Still, it is a bit of an awkward half measure to spec into heavy armor, and then opt not to augment it with tough material. So even though they're faster than other turtles, I'm not going to pretend that they're high tier.
Flying lizard.
We have the flying lizard. Similar to the basilisk, my issue with this build is that its core ability is just incredibly situational, and requires a ton of setup in order to actually derive much benefit from it. Despite its name, the flying lizard sadly does not actually have the flying ability. Flying reptiles were all banned in the KT balance patch, so the so-called flying lizard can do is glide from high positions. This can make for a super handy escape in the right scenario, but once you've used it, you've got to climb all the way back up the tree in order to have access to it again. Meaning if you dive off a tree and end up in another combat scenario, you've got no more options. And with stats as bad as these, it's probably GG. First in C tier, we have the pond turtles. Builds like the red-eared slider and painted turtle. There's nothing too unexpected about these builds. They have all the standard turtle perks like hard armor and a head and appendages that can fully withdraw into the safety of their shell. Due to their high defense, above average bite damage, and solid mobility while underwater, they have great matchups against most other aquatic builds like frogs, fish, and insects, though herons and raccoons can still give them a hard time. Their armor is not strong enough to withstand attacks from crocodilians, but just about nothing is, so I'm not going to dock them any points there. Still, with no unique abilities, most experienced players will be able to learn this matchup pretty quickly and start exploiting the turtle's weak points. Next in C tier, we have the Gila monster. The Gila monster is one of the tankier lizard builds, and possesses one of the highest damage outputs in the game for its size. It owes this high damage not to its actual power stat, but to its venomous bite, a rare ability among lizards. This makes them extremely dangerous in close combat, and combined with their excellent defensive stats and digging ability, this allows them to easily vanquish all the players in any nest it discovers.
Arizona?
The Gila monster is extremely slow-moving, though, which can cause issues if it's ever forced to flee or if it needs to chase down a target. The lack of a long whip-like tail also means its defensive combat options aren't nearly as diverse as other large lizards. Still, with one of the most devastating bites in the game, it's certainly no low tier.
Gecko.
In C tier, we have two lizard builds who invested heavily into the climbing ability. The gecko build operates in a similar manner to the tree frog, with cling pads enabling it to climb any surface with ease. As far as mobility perks though, this is probably one of the best in the game. It works great as an escape option, but is also fantastic for utility and even for offense, allowing the user to approach targets that are normally harder to reach. Being able to hang on tight is also super important for arboreal combat, as fall damage is a major threat. With such a strong clinging ability, geckos can often be the ones tossing other players into the void below. Geckos do have a fair number of weaknesses though. They opt to use their tails to store energy, which can be a useful ability, but unfortunately in doing so, they take away the option to use their tails to attack. Geckos also do not have scales, instead opting for skin that gives disease resistance bonuses, so their armor class is lower than that of most lizards, and actually more akin to amphibians. Because of this, they're quite vulnerable to piercing damage, such as bird talons and snake fangs. And with relatively low damage output, their only real hope against such attacks is stealth, which some do definitely excel at. All in all, solid mid-tier.
Anole
is a small, agile lizard build with a surprising number of special abilities, most notable of which are their adhesive toe pads and their color-changing skin. Most builds that run the cling pad ability tend to be more bulky and cumbersome. Anoles emphatically break this mold, being both excellent climbers and having a climbing speed that rivals that of the squirrel. Because of this, they're great at escaping attacks by jumping between trees and scrambling up branches. But where things really get interesting is with the color change perk. Now, the ability to change colors is one of the most downright broken stealth perks in the game, and one of the main reasons I consider cephalopods top tier. Anoles have probably the most basic version of the color change perk, allowing them to shift between green and brown at will. While nowhere near as versatile as some other color changing builds, green and brown are pretty much all you need the vast majority of the time. This change is very gradual, so it's unlikely to allow you to escape mid-combat. Which is unfortunate because, similar to the gecko, the Anole suffers from a lack of combat options when caught out in the open.
Boom.
At the bottom of C tier, we have the Boomslang. the most venomous snake build from the Colibrid faction.
I'm sorry,
This snake kind of just does everything the vine snake does, but better. It's an excellent climber and has great camouflage, but also packs a devastating bite with extremely overpowered venom for its tier in terms of potency. And while it does have rear fangs, they're significantly larger than most colibrids. But its best adaptation is that the Bwemslang can open its mouth far wider than most snakes, allowing it to deliver a venom-infused bite in spite of the unfavorable location of its fangs. This allows the Bwemslang to go toe-to-toe with high-tier builds like
Chameleon, retract a little bit,
as well as let it use its potent venom as a defensive threat rather than solely just a hunting tool. Now, obviously, this is still far from ideal. Its venom is quite slow-acting, making it not that useful when under attack. In my opinion, the Bwemslang is the perfect example of a snake that really just needs 1 or 2 more buffs to be a high-tier build, but in its current state, it just doesn't quite get there. Next in C tier, we have the first crocodilian on our list, the Ariel.
Isn't that what Ice Age guy was?
More hydrodynamic, granting Gariel players higher mobility and attack spring data in the water. This gives Gariel a downright oppressive matchup versus fish players, as their attack range and speed makes their strikes extremely difficult to avoid. However, this improved speed and accuracy came at a steep cost, as Gariels have a much lower power stat than other crocodilians, even significantly smaller ones like the caiman. As a result, Gariels need to rely on the safety of the water to avoid attacks from more powerful predators like tiger and python, as they cannot put up much of a fight in direct combat, despite their large size and fearsome appearance. Not a bad strategy by any means, but also not a matchup that most players need to worry about.
Right.
At the top of C tier, we have our last member of the Colibrid faction, the King Snake. The King Snake is a large snake build with no venom-based abilities. Instead, this is the first Constrictor build on our list. Constriction is a type of grappling attack that, when properly executed, results in a guaranteed KO, even on extremely large targets. Its main drawback is that this attack strategy is highly vulnerable to disruption. A Constrictor player has to be able to survive all counterattacks from its target while attempting to restrain it. So with that said, you'd think it'd be very difficult to use this technique against a venomous snake, right? Snakes are so flexible that it's very difficult to grapple them without giving them an easy opportunity to bite back. That's where the King Snake's second ability, Venom Resistance, comes in. The ability to ignore all damage from a snake's venom makes the King Snake's matchup against other snakes horribly one-sided. Just for good measure, King Snakes have high enough accuracy on their attacks that they tend to go for the head, which negates a snake's counterattack potential even further.
Damn!
This is about where the King Snake's supremacy ends though, as the rest of its matchups are pretty standard for a snake, and with no venom of its own, it doesn't pose much of a threat to players it can't reliably immobilize in its coils. Luckily, there's a pretty simple change a Constrictor build can make in order to increase the effectiveness of its constriction.
What?
Size. Boas and pythons are the poster children for this type of strategy, being the only snake builds that can be properly classified as tanks. While technically these are two different factions, they are functionally extremely similar and both contain specific examples of highly effective tanky snakes. Although boas and pythons have no venom, their large teeth and incredibly high physical stats make them more than a match for just about any player that challenges them directly. With their thick scales and huge size, it's very difficult to defeat one of these in a 1v1 quickly. Their ability to tank a lot of hits during a fight means that even extremely powerful builds like the Tiger are in for quite an uphill battle if they choose to stand and fight. Well-statted builds with high defense and DPS like the Crocodilian factions are easily overcome with brute strength once a boa or python uses their piercing fangs and powerful coils to trap them in infinite grab combo. Drawbacks to the constriction strategy are vulnerability to third-party attacks and the immense cost of failed kills. While many constrictors have the size required to challenge other large builds, going after too powerful a target can expend a disproportionate amount of HP compared to other snakes. As large builds are often more conspicuous, the most successful Constrictor players will make good use of the camouflage ability.
My anaconda
the most powerful build is without a doubt the Anaconda. These are among the heaviest of any snake and by far the tankiest, with an HP stat that renders most physical attacks almost negligible. While Anacondas are significantly less viable on land due to the greatly reduced speed on terrestrial maps, their mobility, stealth, and camouflage bonuses in the aquatic meta make them nearly unbeatable in that biome. Anacondas are capable of serious speed when their buoyancy abilities can counteract the limitations of their enormous size, making nearly any unsuspecting player who enters the water an easy target.
What the fuck is that?
Their eyes and noses are oriented towards the top of their faces, allowing them to expend minimal energy while camouflaged in aquatic vegetation, waiting for the perfect opportunity to carry out an ambush attack. Despite their formidable base stats and proficiency in highly specialized forms of gameplay, the fact that Anacondas are only truly viable in aquatic environments limits their utility and places them squarely in B tier. The most competitive build in the Python faction is the Burmese Python. While many snake builds are competitively viable only on certain maps with super specialized abilities, Burmese Pythons fit into more of a jack-of-all-trades playstyle and have sufficient mobility in aquatic, terrestrial, and arboreal biomes, in spite of their large size. Burmese pythons are therefore excellent generalist builds, and as seen with many other generalists, they've been causing serious disruption in servers that they weren't meant to be spawning in. Burmese pythons have totally destabilized the meta of the Florida Everglades, due mostly to the python's extremely one-sided matchup against non-social mammal builds, and a lack of the type of builds that normally keep the python player base in check. Now, thankfully, the current top tier of the Everglades is quite capable of defeating or repelling a python in single combat, But
20
because the alligator's
foot
dominance is restricted to the aquatic zones,
in the
pythons
Everglades.
essentially have complete control of the arboreal zone, which has led to a drastic reduction in players running mammal builds like the rabbit, raccoon, fox, and bobcat. While Burmese pythons come at the top of B tier due to their versatility, their low speed stat and lack of venom makes higher tier snakes much more viable choices for most gameplay styles.
Iguana!
In B tier, we've got the tried and true iguana, arguably the best representative of the lizard build as a whole, as it has essentially all the main weaknesses and strengths of its class. I have an entire video on the iguana, so go check that out if you want an in-depth review, but in short, the iguana sports mid-range stats across the board, and is the first lizard on the tier list to make use of its tail for something other than a sacrificial scapegoat. The iguana's tail whip attack allows it to control a solid defensive zone around itself in all directions, enabling it to defend itself from group attacks. Tail whip's damage is on the low side though, so a persistent attacker could potentially just eat the damage in order to break through and land its own attacks. The iguana also has access to the auto-aiming ability, but this is especially costly in the iguana's case, as it'd be giving up its best combat move in the process. Overall, a solid mid-tier with lots of potential, especially in the marine servers.
Tortoise!
Next on our tier list, we have a turtle that abandons the aquatic playstyle for a terrestrial one, the tortoise. Tortoises take the characteristic high and low traits of a turtle to the absolute extreme. Defense is through the roof to the point where brute force is almost completely useless. It can even block attacks from all types of cats, which, as we know, are some of the most overpowered builds in the game. It's for this reason that these players dominate the high scores for total game time on a single character. Now, of course, this level of defense comes at a cost. In this case, it's a severe reduction in speed, but even more so a reduction in intelligence. Because of this, most can't really do well as hunters and have to go for the herbivore playstyle. But don't be fooled. They've got the same powerful bite attack that other turtles do, and can do a surprising amount of damage to players who underestimate them.
Damn. Chameleon.
The chameleon build sports several of the most unique abilities in the game. So most lizards, especially the insectivorous ones, have a pretty simple game plan for taking down enemies. Chase them down and grab them. This strategy has a lot of limitations though. First of all, it means you've got pretty much no options to attack a player who is too large to grab.
They're so small?
It also forces you to optimize heavily towards mobility, forcing you to neglect other potential strategies in order to have a chance at catching up to your target. The chameleon subverts this limitation by speccing into one of the strangest abilities in the game, a tether tongue attack.
Oh.
This essentially functions as a ranged grab, and is extremely effective at scoring the chameleon kills. This also allows the chameleon the freedom to prioritize other stats over mobility, and in the chameleon's case, they're clearly optimized for stealth, as evidenced by their other special ability, color change. Now, while chameleons can change color in order to buff their camouflage, most use it for communication and intimidation, shifting to brighter colors to display dominance. While they don't have the same cling pads that geckos and anoles do, their prehensile tail gives them extra security to ensure that they don't get easily ripped out of trees, and allows them to attack from riskier positions. With all this said though, they still struggle when caught out in the open because of their low mobility, and they also share the same offensive weakness of not being able to take down players that they can't gulp down in a single bite. While some snake builds in lower tiers can use the venom skill, placement in A tier or higher rides almost exclusively on choosing to dump a majority of evolution points into maximizing venom efficiency and delivery methods. Members of the Viper class dominate the A tier. Among the most feared builds in the game, Vipers have a variety of special offensive and sensory skills that help compensate for their generally low defense stats. Their long, hollow fangs are placed at the front of their mouths, and can pierce most armor to deliver lethal doses of venom. But one drawback to the flesh-destroying hemotoxins used by most builds in this group is that they can take a while to immobilize players. Most Viper builds also spec into the infrared heat sensing ability, making them extremely powerful nocturnal ambush attackers and compensating for their lack of speed. Some members of the Viper faction tack on tail adaptations too, for access to the intimidation and luring abilities, but these perks are minor compared to the raw offensive potential.
That shit.
Coming in at the bottom of A tier are Gaboon Vipers, combining the highest defense stat of any venomous build, with near unbeatable stealth and an incredibly high strike speed. Despite their bulky appearance, Gaboon Vipers are almost invisible to spot during gameplay, and are notorious for destroying unsuspecting players due to the sheer volume of venom delivered during an attack, despite their relatively underpowered toxicity compared to other Vipers. With the longest fangs of any Viper, they can deal significant physical piercing damage, in addition to any toxic effects caused by the venom. They conserve energy by remaining motionless when not in combat, and are rather difficult to provoke into unnecessary confrontation. While Gaboon Vipers are an excellent choice for ambush-based play in jungle maps, their lack of versatility and low aggression means they can be easily outmaneuvered by other builds.
Snapping
turtle.
turtle.
If dealing massive damage with a bite appeals to you as a player, then the snapping turtle build is for you. You guys break into A tier by opting for a high power level. They aren't as abysmally slow as tortoises are, but they're not speed demons by any means. So, in order to take down their targets, they opt for the bait and punish strategy. They've got solid stealth, but what really helps them here is their lure ability. This rare and powerful ability allows the user to disguise themselves as loot, which I think we can all agree can be pretty irresistible at times. Because they function as ambush predators with great defense, but have low to medium mobility, they actually occupy a similar niche in water as vipers do on land. And so I think it's only fair they earn the same rating of low A tier. Cottonmouths rank slightly higher in A tier due to their rare ability to use the skill set of the Viper class effectively in the aquatic realm. As the only Viper build in the game with aquatic adaptations, their potent venom and fishhook-shaped fangs make them incredibly effective at farming out fish and frog players for easy XP. This build specs into the Caudal luring ability at lower levels, allowing them to quickly become competitive, and shed this ability at higher levels in favor of better camouflage. Cottonmouths are also relatively tanky and escape many combat situations by using intimidation tactics. Their dominance in aquatic maps makes them able to occasionally overcome more competitive generalist builds, but this is limited by biome and therefore not useful during the majority of gameplay. The Tierzoo is a lizard build that has long been overlooked, but has recently become a serious contender on the tier list. Its recent invasion into the North American server has destabilized the local meta, and when you look at their stats, it's easy to see why. Tiezoos are similar in both strategy and stats to the iguana, but slightly slower and more defense-oriented. Their thicker hide and stockier build allows them to shake off attacks that would send other characters reeling. They've also got a higher intelligence stat than most lizards, which, in addition to making them surprisingly decent support builds, also makes them great at outsmarting builds like alligators in order to attack their nests. Tiezoos are also omnivores, meaning they aren't forced to participate in PvP in order to level up. They did spec into the Autotomy ability though, which I unfortunately think keeps them out of top tier. Rounding out A tier is the rattlesnake. Best suited for desert and forest biomes, these snakes combine a variety of overpowered special abilities with well-allocated base stats. Rattlesnakes are highly capable builds for ambush-based stealth play due to their ability to create thermal maps of other players in low-visibility situations, which makes them one of the most effective counters for mammal players with the night vision ability. Instead of risking health by grappling with other players, rattlesnakes deliver a lethal amount of venom in one quick strike, and then use their prey tracking ability to find them after they've succumbed to toxic status effects. One major advantage for rattlesnake players is the highly effective rattle intimidation technique, which allows them to scare off more powerful challengers without wasting venom or risking serious damage. While rattlesnakes sit at the top of A tier due to their relatively well-rounded stats among members of the Viper class, all Viper builds are still classified as glass cannons and tend to lose out against opponents with quicker acting venom, superior speed, or high enough HP to tank their attacks.
Right.
Sea turtle. For the real standout, the turtle who's brave enough to take a build normally only viable in ponds and rivers, and bring it to a much more competitive server, sea turtles. Sea turtles are proof that even in a server full of power and intelligence tiers, tanks can still be a completely viable option. By speccing into the omnivore playstyle, as opposed to obligate herbivore or carnivore, they never really need to pick fights they can't win. They can always just eat plants while waiting for the next easy opportunity to score a high XP kill. This kind of build is a pretty cookie-cutter survivalist / scavenger build, which would already be solid on its own. However, where sea turtles really shine is their additional defense points placed not into physical resistance, but into venom resistance. The venom of a jellyfish has the potential to one-shot just about anything, but sea turtle players have recognized that aside from venom and stealth, they're completely defenseless. And so by taking the venom resistance perk, they've got an almost completely uncontested source of XP. Now, I don't want you to think sea turtles are easy mode. Because they live in the ocean, there are players with high enough physical attack force to pierce their shell. The target shark's serrated teeth are specifically evolved to cut through armor, so a sea turtle needs to rely not only on their armor, but on their size and shape in relation to the shark's mouth. Shark players can only pierce armor if they secure a grab, and so by facing the ungrabbable face of their shell towards the shark, it can repel a strike that would otherwise be a game ender for them. The fact that sea turtles have any good defensive options at all is a testament to the excellence of this build, and earns the rank of A+ tier.
Okay.
So, without a shadow of a doubt, the best lizard build is the Monitor Lizard.
Really?
They have everything. They've got the best stats, a combination of great mobility, power,
I'm
size,
still confused
and
on what
Similar
I'm
to
thinking
the iguana,
of.
Monitor lizards have an extremely powerful tail whip,
like a
capable
K,
of
I
deterring even
think.
top-tier predators. Monitor lizards
in
also
like
have a venomous
Asia.
bite, which again is a rarity in the lizard faction.
That's
While
like
not the
really
speediest lizards
poisonous.
outright, they do have great versatility in their movement, being able to swim efficiently as well as climb most surfaces, though not to the same degree as the marine iguana or the gecko respectively. Their high intelligence enables them to consistently figure out ways to successfully raid the spawn points of other players, and their high defense makes it so they can be rather difficult to stop once they've committed to an attack. This faction also contains the most powerful lizard in the game, a lizard that reaches near dinosaur power levels.
This one!
Komodo dragons are extremely powerful. They have a venomous bite that, while not as powerful as cobra venom, is still powerful enough to seriously weaken even the tankiest builds.
Hell yeah!
But even without that, they'd be an absolute powerhouse.
These guys are powerful.
Their tail swipes, claw slashes, and thrashing bites can easily shred through the HP of their targets. Their only real weakness is their speed, which, while solid, isn't broken by any means. Still, with their incredible sense of smell, a player can never really truly escape a Komodo that's hunting them. The distance that you need to flee in order to make the Komodo unable to track you down would require you to leave the island server entirely. Last but certainly not least, Komodos, as well as the entire Monitor Lizard player base, understand that their tails are an invaluable weapon that shouldn't be sacrificed in order to escape a battle. Coming up first in this tier is the Cobra build. With impressive base speed, these snakes can actively chase down other players rather than having to solely rely on an ambush strategy. Variants of the Cobra build can spec into moderate aquatic and climbing proficiency, allowing for particularly well-rounded gameplay. Their fast-acting venom is mostly neurotoxic, but can have mixed toxic effects that melt through flesh and maximize the amount of pain inflicted.
Melt?
Even elephant players, the tankiest terrestrial build in the entire game, can be taken down by the ridiculous amount of sheer toxic damage inflicted by a well-placed bite. While all cobra builds have forward-placed fangs to maximize venom delivery, spitting cobra players can use the only ranged attack in the entire snake class by spraying venom up to 2 meters through holes at the front of their fangs. This move has high accuracy and can permanently blind other players when used effectively.
2 meters
Cobra
in
builds
freedom
advertise
units?
their power by using a unique hood modification, intimidating the vast majority of players away from trying to challenge them in the first place. With enough offensive capabilities to take on an entire team of attackers at once, it's no question that Cobras are one of the most competitively viable builds in the Snake faction. Next in S tier are Sea Snakes. With full aquatic adaptations and special underwater sensory skills, these builds can access hard-to-reach areas to demolish even the most competitive fish players. Their fangs are relatively small compared to the closely related Cobra builds, but this works in conjunction with a special attack style. Their venom is some of the deadliest in the game, but causes almost no pain, meaning that other players may not even know they've been hit before fatal toxic damage sets in. While they are effective at using trickster tactics to take down enemies independently, Sea Snake players can also hunt in teams to capitalize on their own offensive potential and compensate for their low individual HP. This build does have a bit of a high skill floor though, and inexperienced players may struggle at playing around the Sea Snake's defensive weaknesses. The Sea Snake build has a unique playstyle that can be hard to master, but with the ability to 1v1 eels and win, this build sits at the top for those who enjoy a challenge. The final build on this tier list is the Black Mamba. With incredibly overpowered base stats for their class, including ridiculous damage and speed, the Black Mamba is by far the most competitive snake, both in terrestrial and arboreal combat situations. Their speed isn't just with respect to movement. The lethal venom of the Black Mamba takes effect extremely quickly, and can decimate enemies of any size due to the high dose delivered in each bite. Black Mamba venom imposes a variety of neurological status effects, including respiratory failure and vision loss, making them one of the most feared opponents in direct combat. Mamba builds have an extremely aggressive and fast-paced playstyle that leaves little room for counterplay, especially considering that their HP and defense stats are among the highest of any venom users due to their large size. While they don't have any unique moves to speak of, Black Mambas dominate by using strategies common among snake players, and do so to an exceptionally effective degree. Topping the charts with the highest DPS potential of any snake, and respectable defensive skills to boot, the Black Mamba is the undisputed ruler of snake builds. At the very top of the reptile tier list, we have the alligators and crocodiles, the two ultimate powerhouses of the reptile faction. They've got absurdly high base stats and a multitude of utterly broken abilities. First and foremost is their bite attack. The Croc's bite is the strongest in the game, able to one-shot most low to mid HP targets and deal serious damage even to the bulkiest players. One of the most important things to note is that this bite deals crushing type damage, making it one of the few bite attacks in the game powerful enough to overwhelm most defenses, even the high-level armor seen in builds like the Turtle and Armadillo. But as powerful and damaging as the Croc's bite is, Crocodilian players aren't actually optimized for direct damage. In fact, most tank builds can recover from a single bite without much consequence. The Crocodile's strategy revolves around being able to bring down large targets, usually ones that have enough HP to survive several powerful attacks. That's why, despite having the strongest bite force in the game, in terms of pure DPS, a Croc's bite is surpassed by sharks due to their serrated, blade-like teeth. While a Croc definitely could spec into this type of tooth, for the relevant matchups, the Crocodile's curved, conical teeth are more useful. These teeth make the Crocodile's grapple much more difficult to break out of, and this is where the Crocodile's ability to take down tank builds really shines through, as their infamous grapple combo, the Death Roll, is one of the most powerful attacks in the game, and can tear through the HP of even the bulkiest players. Let's continue with the Croc's other strong points. The most important ones are going to be the two abilities they use to maximize their effectiveness in the water, both for stealth and mobility. First, their rudder-like tail grants them a massive speed boost while swimming. This is what shifts many a matchup in their favor when in combat in the water, as most of the Croc's potential targets easily outmaneuver it on land. And second, their nostrils and eyes being situated on the top of their heads grants them the unique ability to remain almost completely hidden underwater while still remaining vigilant of their above-water surroundings, and allows them to keep their stamina topped up by not forcing them to hold their breath. Because of their crazy high stats and stacked ability pool, crocodiles and alligators remain the ultimate reptiles. If you've been watching my videos for a while, you may have noticed that some of the content in this video was a bit familiar, yet vastly improved. If you like that, you'll love what I have coming next, Tierzoo Remastered. I'm recreating a bunch of videos from my first few years of content creation, updating them to the quality standards of my modern YouTube videos, re-recording the audio, and redoing many of the visuals. In some cases, even updating the video scripts as new information has been discovered about these animals.
Nice!
These fully remastered versions will debut exclusively on Nebula, who have graciously partnered with me to produce these updated videos. Nebula is all about quality. Not only are they helping me remaster my old work, they're also funding hundreds of shoot-for-the-moon-style dream projects, including some of my favorite originals, like Mad Kings, a docu-series about dictatorships by real-life lore, membership. But hey, if you're not sure about it, Nebula also...
You can check that out on his video, even though I'm not sure this one's still active, but I learned a lot. I think turtles are still and snakes are my favorite, even if my favorite ones didn't make it too high on the list. They're still pretty cool. But the Kodomo, I, I forget the name, but that one is super strong. I remember learning about that years ago. But let me know which one's your favorite on this list. And until next time, bye bye.